Altars are deadly. Because when there is altar, there is the presence of that spirit. That is why as a believer or as a pastor, when you want to plant a church, you don't just go anywhere and say, I want to plant a church. This is a secret I want you to know. You just say, no, yes, God, okay, God wanted me to go to a place. Why do you think Jesus had to fast for 40 days and 40 nights? He was dealing with the powers in Nazareth. He was dealing with the powers in Bethlehem. When you want to plant a church, you must first of all address the principality, because that principality oppresses that environment by altars. That principality has been invited to that environment, is ruling. That's why when people plant church in a place, it's not growing. Because the altar of that city, you have not dealt with it. Because you have not dealt with the altar of that city, you won't go far. That is why when we're going to be speaking of prayer altars from tomorrow, you hear what the Spirit of God is saying. But speaking of altars generally. Now, if you know what God said about the tabernacle, when the tabernacle was to be built, the first thing in the tabernacle was altar. The altar is the entrance. Thank God this is our month of access. Without the altar, there is no entrance. Without the altar, you can't enter. That is why a believer must always raise an altar. This is serious. The first thing in the tabernacle, there were several. In fact, there were 3 compartments. You have the outer court. The outer court was an open space. There you have what? The altar. The brazen altar. That is the access. From there you move to the holy place. From there you move to the Holy of Holies. So you cannot access any part, because in the Holy of Holies, that's where God is. That's where you have the Shekinah glory, the glory of God, the power of God. That anybody that gets in there must hear the voice of God. Either you see God in his beauty or you see God in his devastating form. And that is why it was only the high priest that goes in there every year. And when the high priest is going into the tabernacle, they will tie a chain on his leg. And that chain has little bells. What was the work? Once the bell is shaken, they know the high priest was still alive. The purpose was for God to dwell with them. So where there is an altar, there is a spiritual presence, whether good or bad. That's what the Spirit of God wants you to understand. Wherever there is an altar, there is a presence. There is a presence. You need to understand this. Some of the battles people are fighting because of an altar. When someone goes to consult and say, look, this is what this person did to me. I want to scatter her marriage. What is done is that an altar is raised. When an altar is raised, the demands of that altar is met. That is why when you go, you must pay something, you must give something. And it will say, okay, now every week you are coming, every month you are coming to make the sacrifice, because that is the demand of that spirit. There are different spirits. There are spirits for sickness. There are spirits for poverty. There are spirits for divorce. There are spirits for delinquent children. So when evil people want to attack, they go, when they are told, maybe by which doctor, bring this, bring this, bring this, bring this, bring that. The reason is because they want you to meet the demand of the spirit responsible. Once it is met, that's when the battle starts. That's when we tell you to pray and fast. It's not because of that. Because prayer is an altar. Fasting is an altar. When you don't meet the demand, there are battles you begin to fight. Giving is an altar too. Giving. Have you not seen it? Sometimes you go and meet, God forbid, some of these wicked people. They say, take money and begin to give it to beggars. Why? Because the demand of that spirit is that when money is given to beggars, he acts. It's the money that makes those people to be begging. They are just beggars. They live on the road. There's a spirit responsible for them. So they now tell the person, go and share money to beggars. Why? Because that money will make the beggar to remain a beggar. It gives that spirit power. Altars. It's powerful. You don't joke with an altar. Unbelievers understand this. Believers don't really understand a lot of things. That's why when you serve God casually, you become a casualty. Altars. You get to cities, immorality is very strong. You get to some cities, divorce is very strong. Every household, every house you enter in that city is divorce. You get to some cities, addiction. You get to some cities, gun violence. Why? Because they are altars. You don't just begin to pray, begin to address the altars. Because there are forces that has been given the power. Because somebody met the demands of that altar. That's when they begin to operate.